Welcome back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Takeout Tavern. Historian Jon Meacham is serving as the National Constitution Center's semiquincentennial scholar for, of course, the nation's 250th birthday. I spoke with him about the festivities and how Americans are feeling about it all. Here's some of our conversation. Jon, I'm going to give you some numbers in a minute from some recent surveys nationally, but one of the big takeaways from a collection of surveys is America seems to feel somewhat ambivalent about its 250th anniversary. Why do you think that might be?
I think that it's about the political divide, and there's an irony at work, which is that even the people who are in power are not particularly happy, which tells you something about the motive force behind that particular political movement. At the moment, we've had 3 presidential elections since 2016, and they have been about grievance. They've been about fear more than hope. Part of the MAGA movement, and this is not a partisan observation, it's just an observation, is driven by this sense that the country is slipping away, that the culture is cracking up, that
Right.
it requires an immediate to the barricades kind of reaction, this constant drama that we all live in. And that doesn't create happiness. It creates a kind of political bloodlust, which is different than satisfaction. And then if you're on the other side of the equation, you think the world's going to hell. So I think those are even if you're winning, you're not happy. And if you're losing, you're really not happy.
Gallup found that 77% of Americans say they believe the founders, viewing what exists today, would be disappointed.
I think they would be surprised it took this long, honestly. When you really dig into the Federalist Papers, when you think about what they worried about most, it was about human passion overwhelming reason. It was about what Hamilton called force and accident overwhelming reason and deliberation, reflection and deliberation. Abraham Lincoln's first great public speech in the late 1830s was about how a towering genius could rise among us and become a demagogue. And so the checks and balances of the Constitution, the check on our appetites and our ambitions, it was designed for moments like this. The key thing is that it's not just a question of the substance of the Constitution. It's also about the spirit, because you can't write down a law that absolutely covers everything. So people like you and me use the word norms and customs, and sometimes people roll their eyes. But you know what? What we mean is just doing what seems the commonsensical right thing to do in accordance with those documents.
And Jon, on the optimistic side, I have to believe that if the founders knew we'd made it 250 years, their first impulse would be fantastic.
Yeah. Jefferson thought every 21 years we'd sort of rise and fall, or there would be a revolution. I think it would surprise them that there are so few amendments to the Constitution. But, when you say something like that, you then have to step back and realize it would surprise them that there are 50 states. Right. They were working in a much smaller context. And so until 1802, 1803, when Louisiana joins, when we make the Louisiana Purchase, it's still a pretty self-contained continental country.
And I think they would be proud, and this is, I know, a sort of overtly pro-American sentiment. It's not universally true, but I think it is true over the long history of mankind that as an empire or a near empire, we have been more pacified than others that came before us. That is to say, we did not look and seek conflict. We engaged when necessary. In certain aspects we did, but I think the founders might be proud of that.
Yes, I think we have been. Now, of course, the traditional American left would.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, it would explode. But I think fundamentally that's right. As John Quincy Adams said, we've not gone in search of monsters to destroy. And that's cut both ways,
Mhm.
right? Our isolationism has helped feed that Pacific nature you're talking about. It's also made us too slow sometimes to actually confront monsters who are out there. The 1939 to 1941 period in particular.
Classic
Uh,
example of that. Yeah.
right? We didn't declare. If you ask most Americans, what's the greatest thing we've done? I think you'd get abolition of slavery, and then probably the Second World War. But we didn't declare war on Nazi Germany until Nazi Germany declared war on us 5 days after Pearl Harbor. So
Right.
it's proof that Churchill was right, that you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing once they've exhausted every other possibility.
You can listen to my full conversation with Jon Meacham on your favorite podcast platform.